Welcome to another episode of Metabolic Radio, the podcast dedicated to keeping you informed when it comes to everything fitness. My name is Taylor Rempe, and with the help of my co-host Shane Pace, we aim to expose the truths about the health and fitness industry. The information and suggestions provided on this podcast should not be considered as clinical or medical advice. Please consult with a physician before implementing any information provided on this podcast. Metabolic Radio with your hosts Taylor Rempe, that's me, and Shane Pace.
That's the other dude.
So we know it's been quite some time since we've released an episode, and we wanted to apologize for that. But we are going to do a Q&A today because we have gotten a lot of questions actually from one particular individual. Shane, do we have any other questions that I'm not aware of?
I think we do, but I think they're in the forum mainly, so let's just deal with this one today.
Okay. Cool. Well, let's not waste any time. Let's jump into it. So, this is from Selena. Selena Lou. What's up, girl? Selena, when did she come into the forum? It's pretty recent.
Yeah.
It's like a month or two ago. Yeah, a month and a half ago.
Something like that. I guess I could check, technically.
Cool. So, Selena, sorry for not getting an answer to you quicker. We've just had a couple personal circumstances that have prevented us from recording. But here we are now. And her question for the listeners is, she's got a few different questions. One, to start out, the basis around what she's talking about is, how hard is it to change a person's body set point? And what a body set point is viewed as is this genetic, predisposed metabolic set point where your body will just gravitate back towards that type of metabolism, those types of certain physiological reactions that you'll always kind of gravitate towards, which will end up having impacts on the type of body that you have. Is that kind of correct in your eyes, Shane? In the way that people look at set point theory?
It's kind of a basic overview, but that works.
So what other components do people look at when they're talking about set point theory?
Well, set point theory just means that your body likes, like I said, it more or less is just that it likes to go back to a certain weight ratio, so that because that's where it feels the most healthy, if you will. Though it's not necessarily healthy there, that's where it feels like it should be. Does that make sense? And so when you're modifying it, it'll fluctuate where that healthy standpoint is from the actual view of your body itself.
Now,
does that make sense?
Yeah. Other than looking at body typing myself in terms of like ectomorph, mesomorph, endomorph, that kind of research.
Well, I do want to talk about that though. I want to talk about that in this because she brought it up.
Exactly. But I haven't looked a ton into set point theory specifically versus just the body types like that. And so from your understanding, is there any kind of influential factor? This is just a shot in the dark. Is there any type of research to support that the body gravitates towards this quote unquote set point because of efficiency reasons, for example? Like that particular set point for their body has a higher survival rate or is more efficient in terms of metabolic energy expenditure?
No, neither one of those is actually the case on this. So, true research, I can't pull from the top of my head, but I will tell you that having looked at it from a lot of people's standpoint, dealing with it myself, and looking at set points, dealing with individuals, and as well as people that I've known that deal with set point changing, I can see a lot of reasoning behind that it's real. So again, let me see if I can make this really more clear. when you have a set point, it's where your body naturally wants to set. And so what'll happen is if you gain weight,
it's typical gravitated towards homeostasis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like I said, it's not truly healthy necessarily, but it will be where your body feels the best at where it should be, because you may have built your fat levels up to a certain point, and your body wants to say, let's take me as examples. All right. So when I was in high school, my set point would have been around 165 pounds. Okay. When we met, my set point was about 215. Okay, the fluctuation was because over time I had gained weight, and that's where my body wanted to go to. So my body would change its metabolism and how it was running to put me back to about 210, 215. If I ate more food, it still would take me to 210, 215. If I ate less food, it would want to push me back up to 210, 215 pounds.
See, that's interesting to me, because I was going to ask, well, how can we clarify if that's set point or if that's just lifestyle and habit that
it is
that the body's gotten used to? Like
it's a mix, dude. It's a mix. Your question's fair. You're talking along the idea because of how somebody changes their lifestyle, it puts them into a certain weight ratio. Yeah. And absolutely, that's part of the theory behind set point theory.
Like, so for my example, I tend to still have those ectomorphic qualities, even though I've got substantially more muscle mass. However, because my current lifestyle has me a little more sedentary than what I was when we were first working out together and had first met, my activity has substantially decreased because of changes in my personal life. So I'm not at risk of losing weight, really, because of the change in activity level, though I still think that I have that ectomorphic genetic predisposition, but I haven't been losing weight.
So let's discuss that in more detail, since you brought that up right now. So the difference between a set point and a body type is your body in a certain body type, like you said, will push you towards the idea of more muscle, less muscle, or like body mesomorphic fat. Being athletic. Or body
proportions,
fat levels,
skeletal structure, muscular.
All that stuff goes into that goes more into body typing. Lifestyle affects huge set point. Okay, so when you make lifestyle changes, like your life slowing down, won't change your actual base body type, but it will change your metabolism's reactions. So could you gain more weight? Absolutely. Could you gain more fat? Absolutely. Could you gain more muscle potentially? Yes. All that kind of stuff goes into stuff that you can change.
So then,
does that make any more sense?
Yeah. So then I guess the final question I really have about it is set point really just homeostasis?
Yes. Homeostasis is the base premise behind what set point represents. Yes.
Oh, then absolutely. I mean, so there's been a debate in the industry, for those who don't know, who are listening, whether set point theory exists or not. If we're coming at it from the premise that we just did, if set point really is about where your homeostasis is, then I would argue it absolutely is changeable, because we change our homeostasis constantly.
All the time. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the basis. Now what happens with set point theory is your body, because of what you make in your lifestyle changes, whatever direction it is, if you slow down and you start to eat more and all that kind of stuff, your weight ratios will go up and your body fats will go up because of the nature of what happens. And so your body will actually go and lean towards that kind of status. If you start moving around and doing like what she was speaking of, playing basketball and things like that, it'll speed you up, and then you have the opposite reaction. So you're going to stay a lighter weight automatically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So for example, I was, when I first started lifting weights, I was 20. I was 140 pounds. Yep. I'm now at about 183, and I'm working out, lifting weights substantially less than when I was building up to where I am. So I'm maintaining muscle mass on a substantially lesser amount of stimulus and food intake. Now my activity overall has changed, which is a factor to consider.
Of course.
So that definitely changes the food thing. But I've noticed now keeping my muscle is not nearly as challenging as it either once was or I once thought.
Right.
So has my
Right.
set point theoretically changed to be more about where I'm at?
Absolutely. And see, that's what when we first initially talked about it, and we were going through talking body type way before we even started doing this show.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to explain to you the basis behind it, that you can't modify it, because you can't modify your bone structure. You can't change where your attachment
can't modify body type
muscle. Right, and that's what those kind of things are what define.
You're not going to be able to move your muscle insertion points. You can't change where your tendons attach and how long your bones are.
Exactly right, and you can't change the fact that you have a thinner bone structure or a heavier one.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a thicker bone structure because as you gain muscle mass, your bones thicken. That's an absolute fact.
Yeah,
that's physiology. But the reality of life is that still doesn't technically change your body type. And that's the reason why I say you cannot change your body type, because you can't. I mean, there's just no way to change it.
You can manipulate the way it looks.
You can manipulate the way that it looks, and you can manipulate a lot of ways.
The same.
But your structure will be the same.
Yeah,
and that's why when anybody says that it doesn't exist, they're nuts.
Yeah, it does exist. It's just whether you're saying you can't change what your body type is, even though you can definitely change the way that you look.
Absolutely.
All right,
absolutely. And that's why when everybody starts going online, and if you go and look at a lot of the guys that hack on body typing, their bodies change dramatically. If you watch a lot of movie stars, what's his name? Holy crap, he's
Christian
a
Bale.
Guy. Who?
Christian Bale went through a crazy.
Christian Bale's a good example. Recently.
I mean, if you saw him in The Machinist, and then you saw him in Dark Knight, completely different human being.
Absolutely. So, and that comes from changing and working with a set point.
Okay.
Does that make sense? That's the biggest difference.
And we don't know if there was any, additional help being used in that process. So I don't know.
Agreed. And I'm not saying
don't know.
I'm not saying one. I'm not saying one way or another on that.
Yeah.
And it's possible because I don't know either. But De Niro's the one I was going to say. He was the same kind of thing in the past. He did that kind of stuff a lot. Robert De Niro.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did a lot of stuff where he did a lot of major changes. When he was Al Capone in The Untouchables, he got quite heavy for that. When he was playing in Raging Bull, he was quite thin. When he was more muscular, and the such. What's another show he did? Pretty big shit. Taxi Driver. He was thin. Based guy. He really has a lot of control over what he does with his body. It's extremely hard on you to do it to the level these guys do it. Does it do metabolic damage, which is another part of our question? It does when you do it as extreme as what they've been doing, without question. But can you do it healthily? Absolutely. Controlling set point is one of the most healthy things you do.
Yeah. So to come back to her first question, how hard is it to change one's body set point?
Set point. In my opinion, it is to do it healthily, which is one of the other parts of her question. It takes time. It's not a quick, instantaneous fix. If you control your diet, you get your body working more correctly. I wouldn't say efficiently, because you don't want it to be efficient, but more correctly and burning more. It'll change your set point so that it's a lower set point. If you work with it and you build it up over time, but you have to do that slow. If you don't do it slow, you destroy your body. And then
but I think you touched upon something interesting when you said the word efficient. So I get what you're saying. What I'm curious about though is if set point is homeostasis, right? What takes you out of homeostasis is a large enough or detectable enough stress. And then your body begins adaptation processes to make that stress the new a new homeostasis that stress is no longer a stress; it's comfort zone. And
exactly right.
And so, your body can start developing homeostatic adaptations within a matter of days or weeks, depending on what type of stress we're talking about. So, I think it probably can change very quickly, but that requires you to actually maintain whatever it is that factor is that you've implemented. So,
well, the reason why I don't agree with that isn't because your point isn't valid, is because when you do something very hurriedly and you change it in a fast, dramatic way, dealing with physiology, it's an excessive stress, and so it changes the nature of your body's reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you do it over time, your body actually gets acclimated to it in a much more natural way than if you do it in a big, because if you do it in a big nasty blast, your body will fight against that, and so it'll automatically want to go back the other way and protect itself.
Interesting.
Just see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just wondering why that would be the reason with because it doesn't want to be under stress. So I would think that it would gravitate towards adapting faster towards the stress.
It wouldn't, because of the nature of how your body deals with outward stresses. So one of the things that it does is things like cortisol will spike. And so what does that automatically do? That builds up natural body fat reserves, which is going to cause your body to go with the direction that most people do not want it to go. And so it'll start to fight it. That's when you start getting metabolic damage, because you're pushing your body too fast into a state.
And so you're talking about the stress being that of too much exercise. Too much
exercise,
too much intensity,
too much diet changes in a rapid way. That's why reverse dieting done correctly is amazingly good. If you're going to, especially if you're a competitor, because you actually work back through stages back to what you want to be at. If you just jump off the wagon, so to speak, what do you gain? You gain basically fat. You don't gain much muscle. And so your metabolism changes in how it reacts, and the dynamics of it is a lot more stressful in how it does, how your body reacts to it. Like I said, the whole nature of it is how it works with the endocrine system, and all the different dynamics of what the hormones do as it's going through the changes. But like I said, if you do it over time, your body doesn't have those dynamic changes in those systems. It works with it in a more natural way. So it just takes time. Now, I was going to change the subject, and I guess I don't want to do that until we're past this. I want to make sure there's understanding. So
yeah, that's good. No, I just thoughts coming into my head, so I wanted to see what your insight was on those particular things.
Right.
So the next part of her question is, am I too old to start now, or based on my body type and my genetics, is this an unrealistic goal? Now, she specified that her goal is she doesn't want to hurt her metabolism in the process, but she does not want to gain fat. She only wants to focus on muscle gains and rock hard abs specifically. And I don't think Selena is 36-year-old female, about almost 5'3", at about 110 pounds, and works a sedentary job. But she has an active life outside of that is more activities than it is weight or cardio routines, she said.
Right.
So that's
it's starting to change.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. So, I mean, really, she wouldn't really want to be focusing on any weight loss. She could be focusing on body composition change if she did have extra body fat, which I don't believe she put her body fat percentage in here. But she said that she's more of a leaner Asian descent type of body type. So you can kind of idea at 110 pounds and that height what maybe she looks like.
Well, having seen pictures, I would say she's actually a ectomeso, just about like you. I would say her body type is very similar to yours. Okay. Just a female version of it, but yeah. That was what she put out there in her thought process based on the calculations from bodybuilding.com is that she's more of a which would make her more of a mesoecto. And I would say that she's not a mesoecto, more like Zach. We both know someone named Zach that falls into this body type.
Just a mutual person that we know.
Yeah, good friend of ours. But anyway, yeah, kind of like his body type is that. I don't think she has that body type. It's more towards yours. She has a tendency more to be lean, from what it looks like to me. Does, my guess.
From what you've noticed, does she have more? Like, for example, for my height is normal. It's 5'10" for the male. But I have elongated limbs. I have longer legs and longer arms proportionally to that of my torso and my height. So does she gravitate that way, or is she fairly equally proportioned bone structure-wise?
That's a good question. because I am not certain.
Not that you have the answer. I was just curious if you.
No. That's a very good question, because that would actually define a few things in this.
Mm-hmm. That tends to be what my body is. So I was curious where you had said she was similar to me, if that was a characteristic you noticed.
I wouldn't say her limbs are long like yours. The funny thing is, in our circumstances, I have astronomically weird arm length, and my legs are short.
Yeah, we've discussed this with our both of our reach in martial arts.
Yeah, but my arms it correspond with someone who's about almost 6'2".
Yeah, me too. Which is funny, because I think I have an inch or so on you, don't I?
You have. Well, my height. Now, when I'm actually stretched out correctly and have hung and my back isn't jacked, I'm close to 5'10". I'm a little bit short.
Same, then we have the same.
We're
arms.
Close, yeah, but usually you have me by about an inch, because my height sits between like 5'8" and 3/4 and 5'9" and 3/4.
Yeah,
so
I'm about 5'9" and 3/4. I think if I got stretched out, I'd be 5'10".
Yeah, and you might even be closer to 5'11", but you have me by a little bit, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So.
So, do you think she's too old to start now? Is her based off her body type and genetics? Is this an unrealistic goal to be very muscular?
I don't get the impression, and you've read through this as well. I don't get the impression that she has true metabolic damage, and that's the time where you start to have stress with doing this.
Did she say that she thought that? Because I didn't detect that. I thought she was just saying she wanted to get that.
And that's all she said that I saw too. I don't think she has metabolic damage. I don't think she does. I don't think she. Yeah. I didn't see her imply it, and I don't think she has that. So to answer the question directed off of her, no, she's not too old. There's no such thing as too old, in my opinion. I mean, I know your experience is in that same mode.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Selena, I'm sure you've probably already spoken at least a little bit with Sue in the forum, but Sue would be happy to tell you all about how you're never too old. Sue is a client of mine and friend who she helps us out in the forum. She's involved heavily with the podcast, and she is 66 now. We started training when she was 64, and she has dramatically transformed her body, and she had no real prior resistance training or focused fitness specific program as part of her lifestyle. And so, I mean, she's got 30 years on you. And so, it's never too late. And I mean, there are always unique individual factors that may limit a person's ability to influence their body. But I don't ever think that that's justification enough to not start working on it, and that it's not justification enough to say that you wouldn't see at least noticeable healthy results. So for sure, I think it's definitely something you want to tackle while you're younger now, and even if you don't feel young, you are young. Get as healthy as possible before you get to the age of menopause, and start having lots of changes take place with your endocrine system.
The dynamics, right? The dynamics change. That's the biggest thing to say on that. The dynamics change
for sure. I've trained multiple women pre, intra, and postmenopausal, and it is a struggle for them. And myself as a trainer, I would not say that I specialize in female fitness or being able to handle training for the best type of results with individuals going through that particular phase of life. And health. So definitely it's going to be to your advantage to do as much as you can now within, reason. And I think you're perfectly capable of putting on substantial amounts of muscle mass if that's what you want to do. It sounds like you're very lean, and even if you feel like you aren't lean, the amount of weight that you have, you're quite lean enough that you could just start focusing on building that metabolism through resistance training and building muscle.
Absolutely.
To the point where you would be very satisfied with the way you're starting to look. But I did notice she said exercise and fitness. She doesn't really have a set weight or cardio routine. She is a full-time mother, but she does do a lot of activities. She coaches basketball. She coaches youth soccer. She does actually say she goes to 24-hour fitness once a week at least. Some leisurely runs 3 times a month. So there are some There are some activities she's doing. It doesn't sound like she's doing a consistent program, or a consistent program that would be conducive for her goal of, ripped abs and a lot of muscle. So you definitely want to get on a focused resistance training program. Yes. I would recommend 3 or 4 days a week, focusing on those big compound movements, not doing a ton of high rep lightweight, and not doing a ton of isolation exercises. You can do some isolation exercises to help, with areas you want to put more volume on, or areas you feel might be weak. But I would do squats, deadlifts, presses, rowing. And when I say rowing, I mean not cardio rowing, but heavy, bent over rows and seated rows and those kinds of things. And then add in those accessory exercises on top of those big movements. And I would do that every other day. And you got to eat. I mean, if you want to build muscle, you've got to eat a lot of food. And especially as a female, a lot of women aren't used to eating enough to really put on substantial muscle. And it will take about, research will show it'll take about 10 times as slow to put on muscle in relation to a healthy male, just because you have about 10 times the testosterone, or I'm sorry, not 10 times, 10 times less the testosterone of a typical healthy male. So it's going to be a slow but can be continuous, consistent process for you, especially where you don't have to worry about a lot of fat loss. You can just start seeing muscle building results pretty quickly. I mean, you'll start to see definition fairly quickly at your weight, and your build. Because I've trained some thinner girls, and you start to notice very quickly, which can be a good motivator. Yep. So I don't think that it's unrealistic for her.
Let's talk about some stuff that you and I probably vary on a little bit. So I would say the diet is where we're going to have different perspective on this, because I think you would lean, in your opinion, and correct me 100% because I want you to. That's the reason I'm bringing it up. Mm-hmm. But I would think that you would go higher on carbs, and I probably wouldn't. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would definitely play with carbs because I don't think it's going to hurt her. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't necessarily go on the high end of carbs. Now, I wouldn't go ketogenic necessarily in her case, because we're not worried about. To me, from what I can see, I'm not worried about her endocrine system. I don't think that her insulin is necessarily something that she's going to have a problem with. No. I think that she's going to be able to deal with carbs. But again, it's something that you got to deal with and check and see where you feel. Because if you do feel more healthy on a ketogenic style or low carb style, you feel more energetic, you feel healthier, you feel more alert. Then you probably should cut back on carbs anyway. But it will make your gains slower in the majority of people.
I would agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Right, but it won't necessarily stop your gains. The problem is when a lot of people go down this road, you have to start playing with your protein. And the thing with the protein aspects is it's still going to have a carb action, because if you spike your proteins, as we've talked about in episodes preceding this, what will happen is it'll just do gluconeogenesis, and it'll turn it into a glucose. Mm-hmm. So you'll basically have your proteins become carbs. Mm-hmm. Not all. Don't get me wrong; it won't be all of them, but it will. If you do a higher level of them, that's what will happen.
You're saying
because your body
excess protein intake.
Correct.
Yeah. Correct. Which, if you do have too much excess of any macronutrient, it can get stored as body fat. So it's about having that right protein level for promoting muscle gains, but not going into excess, because then that excess protein that's not turned into glucose, that your body just has surplus of, will get stored as body fat. So that's where the excess protein that some companies and some trainers and some philosophies promote will actually hinder your goals, or not. It wouldn't necessarily slow your muscle gain down. It would just add additional body fat.
Well, the only reason why it would is because the way the body uses glucose to work with filling out muscle. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason why you would have a variant. Mm-hmm. But that all being said, I'm kind of curious to know where you would go nutritionally, because, like I said, I know our views will be not vaguely, but will be different on this.
Yeah, no, you're pretty accurate. I mean, so what I would do, and this is based on a couple things. I don't disagree with your perspective at all. obviously we know that we can build muscle in a deficit. I know you didn't say deficit, but we can build muscle in deficit. We can build muscle on ketogenic. We can build muscle we can build muscle in areas of nutrition that people previously thought, and some people still think you can't, but it is definitely possible, and it's a lot easier than you think. What I would lean towards is probably higher carbohydrate for her, because ectomorphs are ectomorphs because they burn through glucose really fast. So that's one of the characteristics, because of how their physiology works. They just burn through carbs really fast. I'm not negating the fact that it could still have impacts on their pancreas over long periods of time. Thinner individuals still can develop risk of diabetes over time. You don't just have to be overweight to become type 2 diabetic. I'm not denying the fact that going a higher fat may help with cognitive functioning and better energy balance throughout the day. That's totally all valid from the higher fat perspective. What I'm looking at is the characteristics of an ectomorph and ease of implementation. So I would go at about a 50% carb, 30% protein, 20% fat ratio, or flip the protein and fat ratio depending on what the total calorie intake is, because a female may be able to meet her protein needs at 20% depending on the amount that she's eating, but she also may not be able to. So you may need that percentage of protein to be 30 and not 20. That's just based off of the research that I always refer to, which is John Berardi, just because I know his research, I know his recommendations, I know his program. He's a very successful coach. He has a very successful company, Precision Nutrition, and these are the protocols that they follow for body types. So it definitely works. It's not the only thing that you could do. It's just what I would start with and see how you respond, because that would give you more food freedom because you're on a 50% carbohydrate meal plan. It'd be easier to implement in today's society and
easier without question in the United States, for sure.
And because I have trained some ectomorphs, I have ectomorph clients right now, especially males, that, dude, they just don't even eat enough. Like, they eat so little, and especially little on carbohydrates, that they'll touch weights. I had a guy this week who we added it up, and it was probably 800 to 1,000 calories, and we were doing an evening session. And so it was like 7-ish p.m. and he had only had 800 to 1,000 calories for the day. And I mean, his glucose was so low. We did one exercise, 4 sets, and he already went hypoglycemic. So ectomorphs have a high hypoglycemia risk because they burn through glucose very quickly, and then their muscle needs more. So it pulls all of their blood sugar into their muscle, and then they get that fogginess and the dizziness and the nausea, and they tank. So for an ectomorph to have ample amounts of energy during the workout, where they tend to burn through the glucose really fast, would be, in my opinion, easier to do with a higher carbohydrate meal plan. And then the other factor to consider is that carbohydrates do have positive impacts on insulin growth factor, which inherently will help with anabolic responses in the body. So that would be my argument.
Yeah, and I was thinking the thing that I question, and I actually had this discussion recently with someone, but because she was a type 2 diabetic, and now she's going through hypoglycemia to a small extent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she
she reversed it too far, huh?
she lost about 100 pounds, according to what she told me. And in the process, she stopped having problems with diabetes, and now her blood sugar drops to 60 and below.
Oh, that's
50.
very low, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really questioning, and I don't know the answer to this myself, and I don't know if you do or not, but I'm really questioning if you went ketogenic with a body type like that, if it wouldn't actually energize it better, because it'd be more stretched out, it would be more consistent. You should, in a scenario like that, you really shouldn't get depleted, because your body would run differently.
It all depends on if she or they could get their body to adapt to a ketogenic, to burning ketones for fuel and not running off glucose. And as we know, it's totally doable for everybody, but it's challenging to get there and challenging to stay there.
Yeah.
So that would be the issue, I think, that they would run into.
No, and I can see that. I'm just wondering if that would make it more consistent. That's the one thing that while we were talking, because I said to her straight up, I said, you'd want to talk to your doctor about it, especially if you have diabetes, because you don't want to put yourself at risk, especially since if you are a type 2 diabetic, or especially if you're a type 1 diabetic.
Yeah.
Ketoacidosis is a real thing.
Oh, for sure.
And the risk factor is crazy.
Well,
so I was telling her to be safe about it, but
when you're dealing with a situation like this, or a type 1 or a type 2 that needs to, or someone who has hypoglycemia or an ectomorph, carbohydrates aren't a bad thing. It's how you use them. It's what types of carbs you eat. It's
right.
Understanding healthy nutrition and the balance for that individual. So there's definitely cases where eating more carbs versus demonizing them would be an appropriate response, an appropriate approach, depending on that client's circumstances.
Right. No, that's, like I said, I've been thinking on it for the last couple of days, and I think that's actually a fascinating thought process to deal with, because potentially it might actually give them a more consistent energy source to go that direction, and step away from carbs to an extent. I agree, though, completely, and that's the reason why I talked about it before, that an ectomorph, in fact, when you and I talked about it years ago, an ectomorph can handle a lot more carbs than an endomorph by far.
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you, man, because you saw when I first became a trainer and I was transforming my body, I was eating 50 to 60% carbohydrates for like 2 years straight, and I actually still lost body fat in that process. I started out at 140 pounds with more body fat than I ended with, and I ended up at about 175-ish pounds at a lesser body fat percentage. So it's definitely still, possible to incorporate carbohydrates and still hit your goals. It just depends on those so many moving parts and factors for that individual.
Absolutely. That's why what I said to her, about the only thing I said when I was looking at this is I said, the only thing I'm telling you is I wouldn't be too stressed about carbs.
Yeah.
At that point, because we were going to talk about it on the show, I did not want to go into much more detail, but that's because of the nature of her body type. She should not have a problem with carbohydrates.
Yeah. I don't think she will either necessarily.
No, she shouldn't. She shouldn't. But again, she can try testing out different styles and see what works for her more effectively.
Yeah.
Like you brought up, a true ketogenic diet is really, really, really tough to start. Mm-hmm. And once your body adapts to it, it's actually pretty good for most people. It energizes them.
Yeah, yeah.
But getting to that point, it may not even be good for you. You got to find all that kind of stuff out as you go.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely. I always proceed my recommendations with this. Here's what I'm going to recommend. However, if something changes to where you're feeling better, the results are coming better from something else, or we try something and you just perform better, or your body likes it better, let's roll with it. I don't care if I'm wrong. Let's just roll with what works. So try a lot of things and see what your body responds well to, but you have to give yourself enough time in that trial period to actually see what your body's responses are going to be. And over the years, the more that you do this, the more you experiment, the more you'll understand your own body and what you respond well to. And then you won't have to worry and ask so many questions and wonder with all the information on the internet which applies to you. It'll come from self-experimentation and understanding how you respond.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's the reason why I say if you want to try going ketogenic or low carb, because it's a totally different monster. Even though it's similar conceptually, the beast is so dramatically different when you get to the level of being ketogenic as opposed to low carb. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot easier to live in a low carb reality than it is in a ketogenic reality. And I'm not saying somebody couldn't live on it for the rest of their lives. What Taylor and I had talked about for the last year at least, is that we want someone to be flexible in how their body reacts. If it can't react to carbs, then it's in our opinion, and I mean physiologically it makes sense, but it's not healthy. If they can't,
you're just not as metabolically flexible.
Exactly right, and that's the whole reason why we both agree that that's really the most important aspect of this, is trying to get your body to be flexible, to be able to deal with different energy sources, and to use it effectively. Like I said, there's a difference between efficiency and effectiveness.
Yeah.
And we want food to be effective, but we don't necessarily want the body to be efficient.
True.
Efficient is when they become heavy.
Yeah, efficiency is being able to perform the same activity with less fuel. Effectiveness is doing something with a high percentage of success in the effect that you're going for.
Right.
Is how I would put
it.
So,
no, and that's perfect.
She also asked, in regards to her goal about getting six-pack abs, and she says, "How do I get six-pack abs and muscle like the female bodybuilders with my body type? And do I need to take any supplements?" So, one, let's just preface this: if you don't know this already, the vast majority of the bodybuilding industry is loaded with drugs. So, including female athletes.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I'm just going to tell you, you're not going to have muscles like the female athletes you see compete in pretty much any organization other than NGA, because NGA is natural, to my understanding. But I'm not.
It's supposed to.
I'm not an expert in this, so that's what I am aware of, at least to this point. So, unless you're willing to take drugs, you're not going to look entirely like them. You can definitely be very muscular and very lean as a female without taking drugs. But I don't think that you're going to have an issue with your ethnic genetics.
Nope.
In fact, I think with your body type, I think you're at a perfect point, Selena, where you can just build a great foundation because you don't have a lot of body fat. You have, where you're starting is at a healthy weight. I wouldn't go any lower than where you're at because you might be closer to underweight than you are, normal or over. And just build slowly, build that foundation up. And I think that you definitely have a lot of muscle potential. And the answer to your last part of your question from my end, and then we'll get to Shane, is no, you do not need any supplements. I would focus heavily on the proper regimen, on the proper diet, getting the right food intake from whole food sources and healthy, animal proteins and diverse protein sources, and really just dial in the nutrition and exercise very well, because no pill or powder is going to make any difference bigger than your nutrition and your training. Then we can talk about adding in some ergogenic aids, to add with, blood flow and nervous system stimulation, so you can put up a little bit more weight and those kind of things. But you're just never going to need supplements more than you're going to need food and a good training regimen.
Yeah, no, and I'll even give them their credit where credit's due, because they've said it already. But Mind Pump talked about the idea that going for something to give you an edge when you're at a beginning level or working through a certain aspect of it is a waste of time.
Yep.
And so adding full red supplements, which might give you a microscopic edge in a high level competitive nature, isn't really worth it in a natural. You're having a better programming, eating a sound diet, and having better programming in how you actually exercise are going to affect you way more than if you take anything.
Yeah.
If you were taking an actual male steroid base, even then you'll have really crappy, especially being a female, but you'll have really crappy hormonal reactions. But you still won't actually have good reactions unless your programming is decent anyway. Mm-hmm. So if you were going to go down the road of being a female bodybuilder, fitness competitor in any sense of the word on stage, on the female side of it, where you have to take those kinds of things probably to do that, like Taylor was saying. But the reality is, who cares about that until you're at that point?
Yeah,
you're not at that point.
I mean, if you legitimately want to be a pro, you won't be able to unless you're doing what the pros do. That's just probably the case.
Ultimately.
I'm not recommending that. That's just probably the fact. But if you want to get on stage and compete as a novice and you don't care if you place or not and you don't care about a pro card, just stay natural and just see what you're capable of, on your own.
I think you should stay in it no matter what to begin with. I mean, even if you wanted to go down the road and take stuff, don't do that until you to that stage.
She should definitely maximize her natural potential. Yeah.
Way beforehand. Because you will know more about where you can go than you will when you're actually taking stuff.
Mm-hmm. And to be honest, she says, I don't
think she's suggesting she wanted to go that direction. I think the supplement she's talking is more like creatines and things like that.
For sure.
You can use those, but again, they're only going to give you a slight edge. And still, in my opinion, it's not worth doing them at this point.
Yeah. Not until she lays the right foundation.
Right.
But there could be someone out there listening right now, who's in similar shoes or who, may be considering that, and we want to definitely, point them in the right direction of a good foundation prior to doing that, and just maximizing your natural potential. She did say she said, I don't want to hurt my metabolism in this process. If that is one of the things she's definitely considering and wanting to take care of, then I would absolutely recommend no drug use, because as a female, it's going to have a lot of dramatic effects and impacts, sometimes and often negative impacts on your health and your hormones, your emotions, and your mental state as a result of experimenting with anabolic steroids, or even pro-hormones or things that are kind of halfway, that are quote-unquote less risky or that kind of stuff. I know a lot of female competitors, and on stage they look great. Behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on that they're very unhappy with, and negative health impacts that can take place. So I just really wouldn't recommend that, especially if you're looking to protect your natural metabolism.
Right. No, like I said, I think we're completely on the same page on all that.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if there was another part to this. Trying to make sure I hit all the
stuff that's important in this.
She said... Oh, go ahead.
No, please.
She also said, diet-wise, I cannot commit to anything that requires me to measure or count calories. I know myself well enough that I am way too lazy for that shit.
Yeah, I saw that.
So here's the thing. Saying I can't commit to that, that's just completely... I get it. You know yourself way better than me. You're totally right. You know what your tendencies are. You know what your habits are. You know what your patterns are. But the thing is, you can change those. Saying that's you can't do something leaves no room for possibility. So if you're going to accomplish this goal that you want, you can do it without counting and tracking. But depending on your knowledge of nutrition science and your experience in fitness and weightlifting and things like that, it will be more challenging than if you track.
More so.
You can't, and I know Shane doesn't track, and when I'm not super dialed in, I don't track either. And we go more intuitively, but I'll tell you right now, I have quite a background in nutrition, and I always do better when I'm tracking versus when I'm not tracking. So I think you can't manage what you don't measure, and looking at metrics objectively will really allow you to excel with your goal faster than if you don't track. So I would recommend counting calories, not being emotional about it, not being neurotic about it, but counting calories, counting macros, trying different things. Maybe you try carb backloading, maybe you try carb cycling, maybe you change your ratios from a high carb to a high fat. Experiment with that and track it and log what takes place when you do those things, because you'll have more information about how your body functions on those particular protocols, and you'll be more apt to figure out exactly what you need to do for optimal performance, going the direction that you want to go. And
Again, I want to add something on this point really quick. Again, based off of something that Adam Schaefer said on Mind Pump at one point, that I would recommend in this circumstance. If I were going to sit down and do a coaching type scenario, and I'm not a major nutritionist by any means, Taylor's way more versed in nutrition than I am, but the first thing I would do is I would write down what I ate.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily be tracking directly. Mm-hmm. I would write down what I'm eating, figure out exactly where I'm sitting right now, and then I would go I would step backwards,
yes,
kind of reverse engineer to find out where I'm sitting with my macros, and that way I'll have an idea if I'm at 50% carbohydrates, that whole concept, and that way you can understand what you're actually eating, and then the dynamics change, and that you'll become more conscious, because once you start to actually pay attention to what you're eating, you're going to think about it more, and you're actually going to be more actively involved in what you're eating. And that's the only reason why I recommend that kind of stuff. But I think like I said, Taylor's spot on almost all this stuff. The only places we differ even slightly on the majority of what we talked about today is he has a different look on where he would go nutritionally than I would, but I don't disagree with him. So I want that's what I'm saying. I want to give you a point that you can kind of move forward with without necessarily having to commit to counting anything. Because if you figure it out,
she doesn't need to.
No, but what I'm saying though is if you figure it out by reversing it and eating naturally and then writing it down and getting an approximation, you're going to have a better idea on what you're doing anyway. And then at that point, you're naturally going to start to do not necessarily counting directly, but be the equivalent without making it a difficult task.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely recommend. Most people have a hard time recalling what they ate for the last 2 weeks.
Well, you want to write it down. You want to write it down throughout the day, but
but I would. So she probably doesn't remember what she's eaten over the last 14 days. But if Selena, if you can commit to not trying to manipulate your nutrition, eat exactly how you've been eating. If you're going to eat an unhealthy food and that's normally what you would eat, then eat it or at least log it and log for 14 days or at least a week what you've been eating, what has your pattern been, because that'll give you the information Shane is talking about. Where are your calories? Where are your macros? Where are your vitamins and minerals? Or where are you lacking? Where is your fiber? Where is your sugar? And those kinds of things. And what types of fats are you eating? Are they healthy or are they pro-inflammatory? And those kinds of things. So that way you'll know where you're starting, and that may give you better insight into where you ought to shift towards, or, just if what you're doing is already okay and maybe you need to increase the amount, or you need to just change one little factor, those kinds of things.
Right. So let's touch on one other thing. And as far as I can see, we can probably close this out unless you see something else that I don't.
No, but everything that I've got so far. I think we've covered all her questions from her email.
I think so too. The only thing I want to add into is she says she can't commit to being a gym rat since I'm working full time and I'm a mother of a 4-year-old. I get them. Here's what I'm going to tell you. My opinion of the body type that you have, okay? Because the set point is a different monster, but the body type that you have is your body is more geared towards fast workouts anyway.
Yeah.
Your body type is not for long workouts. It's for very fast. Get into a gym or wherever you're going to work out. Get in and get out. Okay. Going on walks, I'm okay with. I would stay away from running. 30 minutes to 45. Right.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Going with that. Yep. I knew that. I wanted you to know I wasn't missing that. But because and that's what I'm saying. You want to be between 30 and 45 minutes when you work out. You don't want to be more than that. There will be times when you start to do paradise type working out scenarios that you'll potentially might be longer, but you don't want to do that for an extended period of time because your body type is not geared towards that. And it'll actually make it so that you lean out. And you won't gain as much muscle. You'll gain less. So the honest to goodness truth is you want to get in and get out of the gym and do very, very short workouts.
And the reason for that physiologically is because ectomorphs tend to be more prone to high cortisol faster, as well as central nervous system fatigue much quicker. So that's why Shane's recommending quick, focused, effective workouts versus long, drawn-out, ineffective workouts that will probably end up doing more damage than good, or than the right amount of damage. Because
it'll change how your body reacts to it. Is what it'll do naturally. I mean, what Taylor's saying is accurate, but just to make it so it's more understandable, it'll make it so that your body reacts in a way that you don't want it to, and
it'll be wasting your time.
Right, it'll work away from your goal. If you want to be really super thin and small, then work out for as long as you want, and
do
that's
a lot
what's
of
going to
high
happen.
reps, do a lot of Too
go
much.
Run.
Go run a bunch.
Run a ton.
Yeah.
You know,
if you don't want a lot of fat and you don't want a lot of muscle either, and you just want to be a skinny sack of skin and bones, then yeah.
Yep.
There you
that's
go.
what you do. And I'm hacking it. If somebody wants to do that, sweet. But I'm just telling you that if your goal is not to go that direction, then don't work out like that with your body type.
Mm-hmm.
So, we can talk about this in more detail on the forum. I know I'm on there quite a bit, and Taylor gets on there periodically. So you can ask even more detail on this in the forum. But I think that we've kind of covered this pretty adequately. I just don't want you to be afraid of going to the gym. I don't want you to waste time in the gym, and that'll make it so you have more time at home as well. Walking and things like that, not bad. Okay, Don't get me wrong on this. Walking is not a bad activity in my opinion for anybody. But the reality of life is your goal is not don't run. I would tell you straight up, stay away from running, and that's according to the goals you're talking about and where we're at currently without experimentation and such. I would tell you that is a waste of your time. In the future that may change, but it really depends on what happens and the dynamics of how it works. So that's where I would lay it. I wanted to give you a little bit more of a sound thing. I'm not right now in this situation. I don't want to lay out rep ranges and such, but I mean we could. Taylor and I both could. He kind of gave you a basis at the beginning anyway. But the reality is, I don't want to go into the detail. I would stick to as you could go to 4 exercises at a time you go in the gym. You don't have to go through a whole stack of different exercises. It's not like you have to do arm curls. You have to do all this other stuff. You can do big compound movements, and you can get in and get out. But that's more my recommendation. You're going to have a better effect overall because of the nature of how your body reacts based on what you've told us and based on what I've seen, based on your pictures that you put up in the forum. Those are the kind of things I would say. So hopefully this has helped.
Yeah. Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off of that, if I had to give quick bullets, it would be you don't need to do any focused aerobic training.
Right.
You should still be walking a lot in terms of getting step count, and I would give the typical recommendation of about 10,000 cumulative steps throughout the day, which as a sedentary worker will be hard. So I would say maybe you do an evening casual walk, Even
if you don't get 10, I'm not even stressed about that necessarily, but you should walk.
Yeah, just to quantify it somehow is the only reason I'm recommending. Sure. But you should do 3,
absolutely.
3, maybe 4, probably not 4 in the beginning, full body compound exercise based barbell and dumbbell resistance training exercises, focusing on slow controlled movements, keeping tension in the muscle. Doing strength and some hypertrophy training. That would be around 8 to 12. Strength would be less than that in terms of reps.
Right.
Challenging weight, very challenging weight, but only if you can keep it under control. And your macros will just depend on what you experiment with and see works best for your body. But you can start with either higher fat or higher carb. Your protein will probably need to be a little bit more than where it is now because most people usually are low on protein, but don't go to crazy excess either. Start with, would you recommend the 1.2 grams per pound?
No.
What would you start with?
Not on proteins. I would max at 1. I would still stay points. Because I think as weird as this is out of my mouth, and I'm gonna say something that has actually probably changed in my opinions in the last couple of months. Now that I know more about what Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he was competing, was using in the way of proteins, I followed up on this. I heard it on again on Mind Pump, but it does ring true to me, so I believe it's true. But Arnold Schwarzenegger stayed below 0.5. And if
yeah, but that's not a fair comparison because he's a male and he was, doing some other stuff.
I agree, and that's why I didn't go to 0.5. I'm just saying that I'm starting to believe that proteins at a high level are not necessary. I didn't believe they should be at a high level anyway. Two is way crazy. If you listen to, and I'm going to throw his name out there
that I've seen.
Not that justifies it. I will absolutely kick him in the teeth because he irritates the crap out of me when I have discussions with him. I've had a few of them on his live feeds, and he just reacts in such a way that makes me mad. But
who?
Stupani. So when Jim Stupani is talking about 2.3 grams per body pound, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. That is someone who's trying to suck somebody into buying an astronomical. Absolutely. And you and I have talked about, I'm a believer in protein powders. I like them. I actually enjoy the taste. And so the reality of life is I'm going to use them. And but am I going to push them like that? That's ridiculous. And if you go to any trainer that recommends you have to, especially as a woman, have 2.3 grams per pound, that's insane. And walk away from them fast. They are lying to you. And I mean that as bold as the. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that it's even been put out there by anybody. And I know, because I've heard Stupano say it, and that's the reason why I use his name. I don't want to put him down. I'm not saying that I don't believe that he has information in his head, but it just irritates me that he says stuff like that, so do not go that direction. But 0.7, I can see 0.7. I can even see 1. I can even technically see 1.2. I just think anything above that has no relationship to reality.
Yeah, I've only ever seen substantial research on 0.67, rounding that to 0.8 for the ease of the user, and then 1.2. That's still a lot. That's a lot.
It is, absolutely. And I'll tell you, for weight loss, in all honesty, and this is going to completely negate what I just said to an extent, because I have actually seen, or I have listened to an individual that did research in England at over 4 grams per pound, and they literally, if you're not doing supplementation, you cannot even physically do that. That's almost an impossibility.
Yeah,
to do.
It have
but
negative impacts on digestion for sure,
and
it wouldn't even absorb.
Yes, and I'm going to tell you that's partly the reason why they got the results that they did, because they actually saw more fat loss and they saw more weight loss overall. And I can understand why that would happen.
Wasn't that done in an athlete population, though?
That's a fair question. I don't have the answer to that.
So, see, that's what we want to pay attention to, too. I mean, that may have been legitimate methodology in that study, but what was the population that they were testing that on, and is that relatable, and what were they doing as part of that research to get that result, and is that applicable to her? Because I would say that's just too much.
Right. Oh, it is without question, in my opinion. I think that overall, that's kind of my point. So can I say there's more research out there that talks about that stuff? Absolutely there is. But the reality of life is it going to be something for the average individual? Absolutely not. And that's why I'm saying what I am, which is to eat that level of protein is not almost. It is literally a physical impossibility without using supplements.
Yeah.
You cannot do it. Your body wouldn't be able. You'd be oversatiated at if you were eating truly in the 1.8 percentile, just because it would fill you the crap up.
I mean, if I were to eat, to give an example, if I were to eat 2 grams per pound of my current body weight, that's 366 grams per day, which is ridiculous. Even if I space that out over, what some people recommend, which is like 6 meals a day or whatever, which I don't necessarily recommend. That's totally still 61 grams per 6 meals. I mean, that's assuming my body will even absorb 60 grams of protein every 3 hours. That's just ridiculous. And then you're talking about doubling that number.
Exactly. And that's, like I said, that to me is a complete insanity. But like I said, is there research out there? There is. You can almost find research about anything if you go to the right sources.
True, yeah.
So, anyway, let's call this. I don't want to keep it going too long. So,
well, Selena, we hope that gave you some good insight. That was some really good discussion points. Sorry for the delay on getting that to you, but if you have further questions in regards to that, just hit us up in the forum on Facebook. People, if you are listeners, if you're not a member of the forum yet, go to facebook.com, type in Metabolic Radio Private Forum. You can request to join the group for free. We'll add you, and you can join the conversation with us. And if you guys have questions, we will answer them on the show. So just submit them to us.
That works.
We good?
Let's get it on.
All right, people. Have a good evening. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Peace.
Hey everybody, thanks again so much for tuning into today's episode. Shane and I hope you learned something new and exciting today about your own health and fitness. Head over to metabolicradio.com. There you'll find our evidence-based and results-driven Atlas programs designed to help teach you everything you need to know when it comes to getting real permanent results. You can also sign up for our newsletter to get free exclusive content. To chat with Shane or myself, just email us at shane@metabolicradio.com or taylor@metabolicradio.com. We would love to hear from you. You can also join the conversation on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com and search for Metabolic Radio Private Forum. There you can request to join the group. We would love to add you to the conversation and answer your questions on the show. And hey, if you like our podcast, please help us grow our community by leaving us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. We would really appreciate your help. Thanks again so much for all your support and your listenership. Now go out there and spread the good word of fitness.